Hello, welcome to another episode of Moms on a Mission. I am your host, Julie Hatch, and glad that you are here today because we've got a great guest, Jo Harris. She is an education specialist. She's a teacher and a leader in therapeutic play. And if you were here last episode, I talked a little bit about play as a lead in to Jo Harris, who is the master of what the benefits of play for kids. And I think she talks also about teachers because she is a teacher herself and parents. But she is an early childhood teacher. She has a lot of experience teaching for, I don't know, over 25 years, I believe, in different countries. She also, interestingly, is a Reiki master and a tapping practitioner, which I'm hoping we're going to get into a little bit later. And she specializes in social and emotional health and the well-being of kids, which is a wonderful thing. So Jo, welcome. Thank you for being here. That sounds like you got a great background.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for your invitation. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, let's go. Let's start talking about play.
Yes, let's talk about play, because I think that you have said that you are passionate about play. And so tell me why that is. Why is play so important? Why does it matter?
Well, there's so many reasons to love play, but number one is that it's fun, and so much can happen when you're playing. So much learning happens. It's not always that planned learning either, and that's what makes it so memorable and encouraging. Ask anyone, any adult what they're hanging out to do, and all they want to do is play, really. And finish work and start playing. But I love it so much for the health benefits, the health and scientific benefits to our brain's health, our emotional health. It's completely non-threatening. Play allows a lot of discovery and there's a lot of healing that can happen, and there's no pressure for the player necessarily. So there's a tremendous amount of healing and the change that you can witness in a player, in their whole being. It can change, and I love it.
Yeah. I know that as a pediatric nurse practitioner, when you have a child who's been traumatized or is sick or needs to express themselves, you do it through play, dolls and acting out. And is that sort of what you mean by healing?
I do, very much so. My training, I have seen clients, I use a sand tray and little miniature toys. And in that sense, I've seen very anxious and stressed children for different reasons. And they can come into the room quite withdrawn and quiet, and they can leave skipping and singing.
Yeah.
And for one client I had permission to say so. The child actually said to me, "I know when I'm happy because I'm singing."
That's great.
Yeah, great. I've never forgotten that.
Yeah. Kids wear their hearts on their sleeves too, don't they? They just act it all out. So you're really talking specifically about therapeutic play?
Yes, therapeutic play. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that fit in with the school system or when you were an educator? Is that what? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think you make it work. Obviously, there are distinct differences when you're working with a client, because the biggest difference, Julie, is when I'm working with a client one-on-one, the play space, the therapeutic play space is all about them. It's nothing to do with me. I'm the facilitator in that I hold the space, but it's whatever they want to do. There's a few, small agreements that you make so everybody's safe physically and emotionally. In the therapeutic play space, it is all about them, and they take the lead, and you have to forget anything that you know as a teacher. No leading, no suggesting. It's quite a test. So whereas
so that makes me think of, and it's not quite the same, because I think about free range play or unstructured play, where you there's no adult saying this is what you're supposed to do. There's no goal to what they're supposed to be doing. So it sounds like that's sort of similar, but in a therapeutic.
In a therapeutic space. But when I'm teaching children, of course, there have to be some different things in place. But in saying that, when working with children in a classroom setting, the whole game has started to change in terms of, for example, it made the headline media news a few weeks ago that services are talking to children about risky play. They're saying, you know, we're not necessarily putting safety barriers everywhere, and we're watching our language in not telling children to be careful all the time. They're trying to reverse the trend, and it's when you're cautious, sometimes, well, the majority of the time, that's when the accidents are happening, because the child is like, you don't trust me, I don't trust me, here's the accident. So, I mean, I'm obviously simplifying that. You can't just say, okay, just go for it.
Right.
You've got to have conversations and things, and set things up and make sure all your staff are on the same page. But generally, it's about stop wrapping children up in cotton wool, because you're taking away their learning opportunities. And stop. And one of my favorite things to say is, you know, especially to any co-workers, if they're about to do something for a child, I'll just encourage them to say, are you about to do something that a child could do for themselves?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes you rethink.
Yeah, that's, I think, that's a way that we need to shift parenting to, is to let the child just sort of let them be, let them figure it out. And I read somewhere, I can't remember where, who it was a child expert, said that kids know they know their boundaries. They know, I mean, all kids are different, actually, and they know their boundaries, and the cautious ones will not take big risks, and the ones that do take big risks can handle it. They know generally what they can handle and what they can't.
Absolutely. It's a tool for life. If we can, this is where the difference can be had. If we're allowing children to discover from a younger age. That's why I love play so much, and the work and the areas that I've developed my skill set in is about, you know, sort of undoing some of the cautiousness that I had as a child.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's great. Wow.
Thank you.
So that must be, so I don't know, is that how you got into this whole interest in play? Were you overprotected as a child, or I don't know. How did you get into this area?
Look, when you know, it's always, some people are fortunate enough to know I knew I was going to do this or that. I mean, from my own play experience, I could completely go back to that space and time in my memory. I used to, I'm sure, like a lot of other young children, lining up my dolls and teddy bears and teaching them to read and write in my bedroom. I love the teaching.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of 3 children, and I don't know, I guess you've done some stuff about birth order and sibling rivalry and topics like that. When you're the youngest of 3 and you're told all the time, you know, you can't do that, you're little, you know, and you want to take your power back. So there was a little bit of that in me. Play, you know, I actually did a subject at school, and I started with child development, and I just found it fascinating, the brain and that kind of thing. And then once I got into my teaching and training, I just adored it. Children is just so pure, and I felt it felt really easy for me. I find that spending time with children is quite easy to understand them, a lot easier to understand than some adults.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Look, I was cautious, but maybe because I was told to be cautious. But as an adult, I mean, I like to take some risk. You know, I packed up my life a couple of times to go and live overseas, and much to my my mum's horror and delight. So yeah, play just it's something that it's enjoyable. I mean, it's a natural draw, I would say. I was very, very lucky to have parents that you know, if there wasn't anything to do, it's like there's a great big garden out there, so we actually don't want to. Where I live and where I grew up, it's not difficult to go out and just be outside and just enjoy nature. So So there's a natural kind of segue from my upbringing. We're encouraged to appreciate nature and living by the beach.
Yeah.
It probably stands to reason that I love Therapeutic Play so much because I spent most of my childhood on the beach digging in the sand.
It's a natural playground, right? The woods and a garden and the beach is just a natural. So do you incorporate nature into your play with your kids that you work with? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the kindergarten that I was last working with, so in Victoria, because it's different everywhere, we're talking about the year before primary school. So that's children who are 4 turning 5.
Okay.
So they start formal education the year they turn 5. So in the kindergarten that I worked in, we actually it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever done is participated in a program called Nature Play. So 1 session per week, the children would come part-time through the week, and on Thursday afternoons, in the middle of winter, we would rug them up and take them to the beach. And there's a little park next to the beach, and they were able to just be together. So there weren't structures, there weren't swings, and there weren't climbing frames. There were trees, and there were bushes, and we'd only take we set some parameters so the children knew how much space, but basically you'd meet the parents and children at the beach, we'd spend some time at the park, and then we'd have something to eat and go on to the beach. So for some children, would be wearing their boots and their big, all dressed up, but then they're stripping clothes off because they're hot and they're running around. The first time I actually went down to the beach, I was quite anxious about it because, there's 29 children and 4 adults, and it's like, this could go anywhere. Yeah. And there's water and there's sand, and but the beautiful thing is one of the very first times that I did that, just to be witness to watching children enjoy themselves, I was actually brought to tears. It was so beautiful. And I said to the adults that I was working with, I cannot believe this is my job. We get to bring children to the beach, and we get them just to reconnect to themselves and each other, and the squeals of delight, just not an iPad in sight, not a phone in sight, not anything. Not that there's I don't have any problem with technology, but for a couple of hours it allowed children to have that experience of just being with each other. And that's where all the imagination comes in, the creativity and the opportunity just to be and find out another part of themselves. And you could see their personalities changing. So sometimes the timid children were the complete daredevils and splashing, and then the other part is that you start to interact with the public because it's a open space. There's people walking dogs and swimming and enjoying the beach as well. Pardon me. So for children to understand that they're part of something bigger than the little space that they're used to.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. Yep.
That is beautiful. That's huge. I don't know if you've ever read the book or heard of the book, Last Child in the Woods.
Oh, yes.
By Richard Louv, and he says nature deficit disorder. So you are totally counteracting that with that nature program that you did. Because it's a shame that kids are so disconnected from nature, and so to bring them, and they just naturally connect with nature if we can just provide it for them. It doesn't have to be a beach; it can just be a park in the city or something. I don't know.
Absolutely. A lot of my attitudes changed to nature play. Growing up here, it's quite regulated, and things have to have a certain fence height and safety precautions. It was when I travelled to and lived in Brussels. I worked in an international school, and the school was right next to the forest. Well, at first I was completely horrified because of what I was used to: high fences, Now there was virtually no fences, a lot less rules, and taking the children out into the, like, what is this? Some sort of fairy tale, but it was magnificent. I mean, that's where it really started for me. And then coming back home and being able to participate in something, well, it's not similar, but the same, that you're aspiring for the same thing. You're putting children in touch with nature.
Yeah.
So magnificent.
Yeah, great. I wanted to, well, actually, I want to ask you a couple of things. So you said it changes the brain, or it affects the brain. Can you speak any more to that, about how that happens, or what happens rather,
I'll try
and
my
what the
best.
Science is behind it? Sorry.
Yeah. So the thing about play is it works much faster than anything else. So when we're learning a new skill, when it's taught formally, there's several repetitions that need to, be made for everything to marry up. So when we're playing, the actual neural pathways are lit up much faster, because when you're playing, you're not necessarily thinking, am I getting it right? Is there a technique? You are in a completely different space. So forgive me for not being, totally scientific about it. I wouldn't like to try and quote, but play lights up the brain like nothing else. What you can do, what can happen with play and integration of skills is so much faster than through formal teaching.
Interesting.
Because you're taking away, I have to learn something. So if you're sitting in a classroom and something is being taught to you, you know how it feels when you have to sit there and take information in. But when you're given materials, you're discovering immediately. So when you're watching children play, they often surprise you, because they start naturally using mathematical language, scientific language that comes into place because it's intuitive and it's what you feel connected to. So in terms of the science, it's allowing, if you think of someone that has been, experiencing difficulty, some anxiety, when you're playing, and particularly in therapeutic play spaces, there's no emphasis to have to talk about it. You don't have to go and revisit the trauma necessarily.
Yeah.
You can have healing occurring without words. Yeah. And that's what makes it so magnificent. Children are drawn to, adults can use play therapy as well. In fact, a lot of sexual abuse survivors use sand tray therapy because it's not invasive, and the player is in control of the situation, so it doesn't have to lead anywhere. And what's happening is that they're sometimes representing a story or a situation through play, and when you're looking at it from a distance, you can take the emotion, you can reduce the emotion and increase the potential to heal. So that's what makes it so powerful. So powerful.
Now I wonder, so you say play is intuitive, and I can understand how preschoolers and young kids play is a great way to learn. At what age do you think that starts to fade and you have to start learning the way school teaches you to learn?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was in a situation where I saw a 9-year-old girl as a client, and in our sessions, she went back to the baby dolls and started, dressing them and putting them in blankets and, nurturing. And excuse me. And her family decided not to continue with the sessions. I was thrilled. I'm like, great, look what's happening. And unfortunately, their attitude was very different to mine. And they said, well, when our daughter got home, she went back and, got all her dolls out that had gone in the cupboard. And we think it's a bit babyish.
Oh.
To be doing that. And I'm like, respectfully, okay, that's not the area they want to go. But inside, I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, so, I mean,
she needed to do that.
Yeah, I do believe that children would continue to play. You know, some are up to maybe age 12,
Okay.
but it depends what other people around them are saying and peer
Sure.
pressure. I mean, for myself, I didn't have a Cabbage Patch doll. I had the one like it. But I know that there was this really strange, you know, I still remember feeling very attached to my dolls when I was 11 or 12. And I remember my mum saying, okay, it's time for these things to go. So
Ah,
because I remember she said to me, well, there's somewhere I wanted to go with my friends independently. And, you know, it was quite a grown-up thing to do. And she said, well, you can't want to go out with your friends and be trusted to take a train or a bus somewhere and want to play with your dolls. So
ooh,
it's a hard one. But then, you know, like we were saying before we started talking, you know, this recording, people would play forever. It's just, I think it's to do with who's around you and what
yeah,
influence you have. A friend of mine her eldest son has just turned 18 and he still likes playing with Lego.
yeah, yeah. So
And
what?
he,
So
you know,
great.
it's great. It's so creative. He's got two younger brothers, and you know, it's all Lego and drawing, and you know, she's feeling really blessed because she's like, oh, if they want to play with Lego, that's fine. I'm not becoming young men, but
It could be so much worse.
that's right. You know, they're finding their way that
Yeah,
way. But just finally, I'd say I think play's made this resurgence with being in such strict lockdowns. People are returning. You know, there are. I mean, I thought people don't necessarily think that family game night, is playing, but it is.
yeah, yeah.
That's, you know, it exists for a reason. I love that people want to do that. When I meet my own family, we do we bring out, there's a game called Pass the Pigs, which is hilarious. I don't know if you've got that one, but card games, you know, it depends what you define as play and what people define as play.
Yeah, but certainly games are play, certainly. So
Oh,
yeah,
you learn so much about people through games and the way they play. Oh my goodness. Just even, you know, tic-tac-toe or noughts
yeah.
and crosses is like, oh, if you want to know about a person, just get the card deck out.
Wow. Yeah, we all need to play a lot more. Adults, I think, need to play a lot more, and we should bring it much more of it into our kids. Here in the States, I don't know if it's the same in Australia. I think the parents are so push, push, push to learn more and excel and be better and do this and be better than the next guy. And play just is not. I'm overgeneralizing, but I think for the large part that people just don't think that play is important. And it is obviously hugely important. And I love hearing your passion about it. So I'm going to interrupt for 1 second, and because I didn't introduce you properly at the beginning, saying that you're from Australia, you're down under, obviously by your accent. And Jo Harris you can find her on Facebook if you're interested in connecting with her. Jo Harris, Joyful Teacher, because she also works with teachers as much as with kids, I think. Can you tell us anything about your work with teachers? And okay, I'll just stop there because I have more. So how do you work with teachers?
Yeah, so I created a program called the Joyful Teacher, and that encompasses some complementary therapies like Reiki and tapping, which we can talk about more if you want. But basically, throughout my training and throughout my experience, I have had a natural I have a sort of natural ability in leading others. I wasn't always aware of it. It's been pointed out to me. But when I was working in Belgium, I worked with new graduate teachers, and I was just so excited to work with them. And it's kind of gone from there. And then in community networks with teachers, it's just fun and easy for me to talk to other teachers. I've worked in higher education, so people, young adults who are training to become early childhood professionals. I've worked there as well. So I've taught in an adult classroom, very different.
Yeah.
And I've supervised, pre-service teachers. So when they're doing their teaching rounds and, getting acquainted with the shift from study to work. So in the last role in the kindergarten I taught at, I was the educational leader and the nominated supervisor. So what that meant was supervising the daily running of the service to make sure everything was legally compliant, but also responsible for strengthening the pedagogy of our teaching. So the Joyful Teacher program came about, as these things often do, from your own experiences.
Yeah.
I became a play therapist because at one point I felt like I didn't feel skilled enough to reach all of the children in my class. And things kind of moved from there. Once I zeroed in on, children's health, I had an awareness of my own health, and so many teachers are such givers and forget to take care of themselves. So the Joyful Teacher program came in as a way of the skills that I have. Combining the leadership kind of skills and the desire for improving adult health, because there's one thing to look after children's health, but if we're adults that are not equipped, you can't see that and you can't be that.
Yeah, that also applies for parents, but I will say specifically for mothers, that the mothers are usually the last to take care of themselves because they're giving to everybody else in their life.
Absolutely.
This is a good segue into, I want to ask you about what you've seen as the impacts on kids and on teachers with the pandemic and lockdown and distance learning and virtual learning, and what has been your experience with that, or any commentary about that? I know that that's a loaded question, but anything that you can offer. I for one say my kids are grown, but I think that a lot of people really appreciate teachers more now. A lot of parents do, because they see what it is to be around kids all day and teach them. And so we're sort of back to normal, but not completely. So anyways, so what is your take on, or any tips for parents with the whole pandemic and virtual learning?
So I could answer that in two ways. From the teacher point of view, yes, I did have experience with pandemic teaching. And it was also, just to add some more fun, we were actually in the midst of a new building. So we had a construction site plus,
oh geez,
plus teaching. So it was extra challenging. It was, to use, to refer to the most overused word in the vernacular right now, which is pivot. We all pivoted. The move to digital learning was really strange, especially with preschoolers. So, how do you do that? So, I mean, you've got the magic of an iPad. I mean, the thing is, it was a strange but really incredible time to look at your own skills. And the thing is that you always had the teacher within you, but it was just about the delivery. So, I mean, I did crazy things like most teachers. You'd be reading stories to a camera and thinking this is so odd. But there were parents who were kind enough to say, just to see you and hear your voice when we couldn't actually physically see you meant a lot. And it was a strange thing to try and do, but I looked at it in terms of connection. So as much as technology can be invasive, it can also be incredible in the way that it allows participation and invitation. So in my own situation, my mum celebrated her 80th birthday during a lockdown, and finally getting the hang of, messenger videoing through the phone, and it's been it's been crazy, but it's also been fun. It's allowed us to laugh in a really stressful situation. And learn from each other, because it does change you. So I think that the key takeaway is, to look at play as the connector. Yeah. And you're right, there has been that opportunity to look at play completely differently, to celebrate teachers and what they do. Yeah. And also for people, I think it encouraged a lot of people to look at their own learning experience and perhaps see their child a little bit differently. So I mentioned my friend whose son just turned 18. He's in his final year of high school, and to look at all the things that should be happening. It is an opportunity for people to connect like never before, and to really, really, truly understand what a person is going through. And it really cuts through a lot of stuff, like what's important.
So
there's
true.
The positioning of teachers and how important they are, plus there's been a really good opportunity to close in on how children are learning, and is the current school model the best? And it just leaves me wide open to say, great, now we've got the platform, can we have the conversation about maybe there are things that we can keep going, that things that might have been outdated, shown up. A lot of learning, a lot of new conversations, which are very exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking with somebody about the education, and she homeschooled. She had one kid in regular education. Anyways, like you say, that's a whole topic of conversation, and now is the time to have it. I really, really hope that we don't all just default back to default, which is just, this is such an opportunity, and it's going to be closing pretty soon. Okay, so let me just move on to one last thing, because I told you I wanted to talk about tapping. I have understood tapping to be used particularly for anybody, kids or adults, with anxiety. But that's about all that I know about it. I know about the acupuncture points that you tap on. But can you, I have a very limited knowledge, but I'm fascinated by it. So can you sort of enlighten me?
Sure. Okay. So what I can tell you is tapping, it absolutely is. It's for anyone. And the amazing thing about it is the ability to zero in on whatever your challenge is, your problem is. So yes, it is used for anxiety, but I also know of methods where you can use it for visualization. So I've been taught something called a peak performance, and my friend and colleague, and also my tapping teacher, has helped athletes using tapping and using a visualization sequence. So it's incredible. It spoke to me because it's an energy healing. And yes, you do use they're similar. It's not the same, similar points, but basically what you're doing is you come to the situation with whatever your challenge is or your problem is, and you give it a rating. And then what is so magic about it, it encourages you to look at and listen to the physical signs and symptoms that your body's giving, if it's pain or discomfort. And once you start to label and acknowledge, things start to feel better really fast. So the tapping's an opportunity to blow out the cobwebs, should I say. It's moving that energy meter. So where things can feel up at a 10 and really, really difficult and really unpleasant, very quickly you can move down that scale and resolve something. And again, it's one of those modalities where you don't have to go into the trauma so deeply. It's just bringing up enough of the energy to the top that you can feel it, and then you can start to move it
and shift it. Can you do just a little bit? I'm doing this. Can you give just a tiny quick demonstration?
If you just want to tune in, you can just use the side of your hand. So that's basically to help you get a tune in. If you're not sure what it is, if you're just feeling a little bit, but you don't know what it is, it's like a gentle kind of way to just sort of center yourself. So that's the starting point for most of the sequences. So I've learned emotional freedom technique, EFT, and I've also learned TFT, which is thought field therapy. And they are similar in lots of ways. Thought field therapy came first, and EFT has some shortcuts, but essentially they're doing a lot of the same work. Another little spot you can use, so around you, there's a sore spot. If you feel just around near your collarbones, if you poke enough, you can find an area there. If you're feeling emotional and say you're in public and you can't, that's not the time. You have to unfortunately, you have to be in the moment. Rubbing that sore spot can help you alleviate some of the discomfort or the emotion that might be rising and you can't manage it right then. Here's just one final quick one. If you're ever feeling queasy, nauseous, go under the eye, just here, the stomach meridian. You're feeling a bit ooh, that's the place to go. So that's, I've broken up bits and pieces, but you can use the different points will signify different areas. So there's anger, and then you start using the fingers and hands. In a session, you go and the practitioner would use an algorithm. So there's a set sequence there's one that's made for pretty much each topic. So in TFT, there's an algorithm for, I just forgot the words, when you fly, jet lag. Depending which way you go, there's a sequence for jet lag. There's a sequence for heartache and love pain and trauma. So it really depends on what you want. But what is so interesting is that there's like I said, you don't necessarily have to go right into the depth of a problem to start to feel better really quickly. And after tapping, there's usually some sort of aha moment where you go, oh, I never saw it like that before. And the real magic is you're connecting into your body. You're listening to your body. It's giving you everything you need. So but what it's doing is taking you from, at times if you're at a 10 in panic and distress, you can come down quite quickly and say, okay, I can deal with this. So it's working with our biological, radar that's saying danger, danger,
right?
And quietening down that amygdala and saying, okay, let's just get to a point and bring in a new perspective. It's just incredible that the changes can come by so quickly, and the immediate relief you get is amazing.
And it's in the control of the person. It's all in their hands, and which is, acupuncture and energy medicine and Reiki and so much to be said for. Have you seen it work often with kids or adults? Or, like I say, I've only just aware of what it is. I've never taught it or practiced it, but I'm sure that it works.
I do have I have plenty of experience myself, having used it to work on with my own stuff. I've used tapping less with children, and just at the moment I'm not seeing clients, but you can absolutely see those differences. So it's what I used mostly with children is just one of the most memorable things that I've ever done is when we've had a relaxation time during a long day of teaching. I'd just encourage them to sit and put their hand on their heart and just feel their heart beating, and they're kind of a bit giggly and then they go, isn't it special? It's like, that's keeping you going. And children, Reiki comes really easily to them. It's very once they get over the giggly, if they're going there. But a lot of I had a child that spoke no English when I first met him. He was Russian. But he copied me when I showed him how to put your hand on your heart and calm yourself. He just did it back to me, and I'm like, I could feel the power of it just watching him. and it soothed him. You don't need words with energy healing. You could do tapping almost with no words. So
So
that's
true.
what makes it incredible.
Yeah, and sometimes words get in the way, sort of like
Yeah.
play. And
Yes, sometimes they do.
yeah. Wow. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up, Joe. We could go on and on. I want to talk about routines, and who knows, maybe we'll do another interview sometime, because you have lots to say. But this has been a total pleasure with your passion for play and kids and teachers, and with the great things that you are doing in this world. Don't you think? I do.
Thank you. I'm really, I like I said, sometimes I can't believe this is my job. I wrote a piece about nature play yesterday for a new audience. So I was so excited, because you sometimes forget what you know, what you've been living and breathing. And then it's like, people go, what? And I'm like, don't you know that? It's fun. Yeah.
Well, you're obviously doing what you're meant to do. So
I am.
good on you. So again, anybody who wants to connect with Joe Harris, she is on Facebook under Joe Harris, Joyful Teacher. Is that right? Joyful,
yeah, that's me.
Joe Harris, Joyful Teacher. All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And we'll stay on, but I'm just going to sign out on this podcast, and thank everybody for listening, tuning in. Share if you can, give it a like, give it a comment, whatever you'd like to do. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.